Hello, everyone. Welcome to Portside Art Center's Artists at Lunch series. If you are unfamiliar with Portside Art Center, we are a nonprofit arts organization established in 2008, and we enable children, teens, and adults to remain uniquely creative through year-round visual arts programming. Today, we have Fibers artist Carla Fisher with us. Carla is an artist who recently relocated from Philadelphia to the small town of Oriental, North Carolina. She has been a friend of Portside for the past couple of years, has done artist talks with us before, and she was also a resident artist at Cherry Street Pier in Philadelphia right before moving to North Carolina. So without further ado, I am going to hand it over to Carla. Hello, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. I am really thrilled to be a part of it because I love the mission of Portside, and I love that my name could be associated with it and that you all think of me. So it's an honor to me. So I thought I would just start out just a little bit because my story is actually a little different than the story others might have come to this world of art. Specifically, I actually didn't come into art until just a few years ago. In fact, I spent 25 years in the financial services field. And I was working for an S&P 100 company where I was like a broker, then a manager and a broker manager and a regional manager and that sort of thing. But my husband convinced me to take early retirement, which I was so thrilled to do. He had actually spent 31 years in the military. He was actually quite talented at what he did, and he was actually recalled 16 different times after 9/11 because of his expertise. So we decided to do that infamous thing of put all your worldly goods in storage and travel all around the country in a 40-foot motorhome. And it was a pretty cool, wonderful thing, and something I'm so thankful that I did. And the reason is, frankly, because that's a time period that it was a gift to me. My husband and I were together for 40 years, and he died. Plain and simple, he died, and it was. I told people what I needed to do was to figure out how to take 40 years of we and turn it upside down and make me. And so it became its own challenge. And a dear friend of mine said to me, Carla, what you need to do is get a notebook. And in that notebook, you need simply to write down everything that interests you. Don't judge it and don't justify it. Just write it down. And when you're ready, you'll know what you need to do. Well, it became clear that I said, thank God I listened to somebody for once in my life. It really did become quite clear that what I needed to do was something with the arts. And so I went back to school. I was in my 60s, and I went back to college at the University of the Arts. They had a fabulous program that unfortunately no longer exists, but it was called a post-baccalaureate program. And it allowed someone like me who had a degree or degrees in other areas that was working, or that they worked in another field, showed personal discipline and success, that you could go into this program and you could study art. You had to have a primary discipline. In my case, it was fibers, and two sub-disciplines, which in my case were big metal sculpture and glass. Glass blowing. And you could do that, and then you could matriculate right on into the MFA. So I made the choice to do this, and it was, I'm so thankful that I did. But my art career really didn't start until I graduated in May of 2016. So again, I'm a little late to the party, as a lot of people might see, but I think that actually works in my favor because it makes me more productive. I know I don't have much time left, so I got to get busy at work. So that's basically what I do. But I wanted to take a couple of minutes to describe that, not only to help you understand that I've not been a part of this world for a long time in the world of art, but the other part is for you to understand that there are two elements to my work that is it's the theme, the thrust, the core of what I do. When I went back to school, I was lucky enough in my very first course. It was called Surface Design with Warren Seelig, who is just a god in the fiber world. And Warren taught me about doing surface design and shadows and things like that. And I learned right away a way to sculpt with thread. And that's what I do. I sculpt 2 and 3-dimensionally with thread. Thread is in absolutely every piece of work that I ever do because the thread is actually a metaphor for me. I make thread do things that people never believed that something like that could do. And it was kind of like making me go back to school at such a ripe old age. There's another element as well. As I tried to grow and experiment and try different things, I accidentally stumbled onto another metaphor, and now it is also part of my mantra, and that is I work with recyclables. That's a very nice way of saying I work with trash, and there's trash in everything I do. When you lose someone that you love, but particularly when you lose a spouse, you really are very lost. You have these feelings of, everything is always, it was we. You did everything together. You supported each other. You shared your days. The mechanics of your days were surrounded with each other, whether you realize it or not. And when that person's gone, you feel very lost and worthless and useless and like you're really quite discarded. And that's much the way we think about trash. So I began using trash in my work, and the trash is a metaphor for widowhood. So when you see something like that, it's 99% of the time it isn't actually a recycled material. I'm going to show you a piece today where it really truly isn't recycled, but everything else is. So if you'd like to, Claudia, if you'd pop into the website, I'd really like to go to that. And I made some notes so I don't forget what I want to try and say here, and I can keep with her. But what I do a lot is I mentioned that I have to sculpt with thread and I work 3-dimensionally. And this is just the beginnings of the face of my website that I have. And it shows that's, for example, that piece has thread and dryer lint. But I'd like for us to talk for just a minute about pieces like The Secrets of the Caribbean. That is actually a sculpture of nothing but thread. Thread has created that 3-dimensional nature to it. The colors and the textures and things like that are really important to me. They're, again, part of the thrust of my work, part of the secret of my work, if you will. This comes from a trip that I was on not long after my husband died. I went on a cruise with my cousin and we were cruising in the Caribbean, and literally these are just mock-ups from what I experienced there. The next one that you would see is actually one that it's called Those Pesky Shrooms. And this is a piece that I just couldn't get it out of my head. My nephew showed me a picture, or actually my niece's husband, I guess he's technically not my nephew, but he had shown me a piece of turkey, or picture of turkey mushrooms. And when I decided to try and see what I could do to expand to go 3-dimensionally, this was the first piece that I pushed to do 3-dimensionally. And it's just absolutely, it's one that's close to my heart just because of that. But even when I work 3-dimensionally or 2-dimensionally, I oftentimes will use a 3-dimensional element to that. And Claudia, if you would move to like Blood Moon Through Trees there. This actually is a piece of work that it's 52 inches square. And the trees, actually, if you could drill down to one of the there you go. If you look at, for example, the picture on your left, most particularly, you can see the shadows where the 3-dimensional branches actually are casting a shadow onto the surface of the moon. The surface of the moon is something that it's hand painted, then different thread pieces were then stitched onto the moon's surface to be able to give it the color and the texture. Its sister piece is this next one, Take That, Mrs. Connor, that I have to pause here and tell you the backstory about Mrs. Connor. You'll notice that she also looks this piece looks very much like the Blood Moon Through Trees. And this piece was actually first. And the story really is this. When I was in the 7th grade, I went to the only art class I had prior to my going to art school. And Mrs. Connor was the teacher. And we had this assignment that we were to make a poster. Well, I'm here to tell you, I swear to you, as God is my witness, it was the absolute most beautiful, best, perfect poster you ever saw in your life that I took into that class that day. But she, with disdain, rather looked at me in tisk fashion, said, you know, sweetie, you probably should find another creative outlet because art just isn't it for you. And so from that moment on, I thought I couldn't do art. I would leave that to my brothers who were quite talented at drawing. I could tell them all the world about colors and working with colors, but I just convinced myself I couldn't do it. As this piece was coming together, it's reverse painted on a thing called Bondaweb, which is scrap material that's used in the sign industry, and as a final coating. And so I was painting that, and all of a sudden, 50 years that woman never appeared in my head, but she did that day, and I went like, take that, Mrs. Connor, because it looked pretty good. It came out exactly like I wanted it. And as each time I would work further and further, I would find myself with that same refrain with a lot more emphasis, like, take that, Mrs. Connor. And so in the end, I was working with an agent, and I told my agent about that story. And she said, you know, I really don't give a damn what you name that piece. It, for now, here and forevermore, will always be known as take that, Mrs. Connor. And so I said she forced me to make Blood Moon Through Trees so I could be able to do that as well. So that's a fun story that tells a lot about my own mental state on where it was, but how far I've come, because now I are an artist. Or at least I think I am. So, but Mrs. Connor has that same thing where, again, you can kind of see it here as the detailed pictures. Those aren't marks on the back of that you see. Instead, what those are really the shadows that are coming from the branches. It's a signature way of framing a lot of times for me, in that I frame it between two pieces of museum glass. This was a trick that I learned of playing with the shadows to give depth. I learned that from Warren Seelig, and I will always give him credit. He is just, he's a genius. And I told him I was stealing it, and he said he was okay with that. So that's where we are. As we do, I do use all different kinds of trash in my work, and in between working with pieces, I'm always experimenting with different things to see what will happen, what will give me, you know, how far can I make something go? What colors, what textures, what patinas can I get out of different things that I work with, and what can I play with? And so to that end, I use one of the first things I ever worked with was Tyvek. And I know you're familiar with Tyvek. You may just not be familiar with its name. You know, we all have gotten those envelopes in the mail that you can't pull apart for the love of Elizabeth. You just can't do it, right? You can't destroy them. I did figure out a way to destroy them. And so, Claudia, if you would just, you know, we'd move, let's see which we were going to use, which piece to talk about this. We're going to talk about Stradivarius first. Let's go to Stradivarius, because the Tyvek envelope, Stradivarius here is one of my personal favorite pieces, but it actually starts at its core as an envelope. And if you look at my work carefully, you'll see the little tell. I'm going to ask Claudia to go into this particular picture and zoom in right in through there. You'll see some red there. You actually might want to go to the detailed picture a little bit. And you can see it a little bit more right here on the one lip, right there. You can see red. That's the postmark from that Tyvek envelope. So the tell is always there in my work, but that's one of just 6 grades. There are actually 6 different grades that DuPont has in their work, which was a fun thing, by the way, about being at the pier, because the DuPont people would come in and visit, and I learned as much from them about what I could do and use as well. So, but that's using the conventional Tyvek, but there's also the house Tyvek. I'm sure you've gone along the roads and you've seen houses that were getting, before they had their siding or brick or whatever, and it would have like Lowe's and Tyvek, this white paper and things. And that was me that you saw scrounging and getting those scraps of that kind of Tyvek. So if we actually were going to go to Atchafalaya Prize, and I'll show you that the next, it's just to to the right there, yeah. This is actually using house Tyvek. This that you see on the right-hand side where the gray is, where it's a little, you can see just below her cursor where it's got a little bit of texture. That Tyvek is a little thicker, and so it takes it handles differently in the work, but it's still fun. It gives me the patina that I wanted. It gave me the texture, the visual that I wanted. This, I'm sorry.
There's someone in the.
Okay, and then there is, this is a good example of some of the other things that I do. I used to be a big knitter. So the white that you see, the white fuzzy, is left over Angora wool yarn. But as you go down, and Claudia, I'd ask you to come down that left-hand side, you see there are, especially right there, there's another little tuft up above. There are these little fuzzy little things. Those are actually Keurig coffee filters. We all have, those Keurigs, or at least a familiarity with those Keurigs. And I was like, what makes you tick? Why do you work? And then I found it when I opened up these Keurig pods. What I found was there's this cute little filter that's in there. And below that is this other little tiny plastic disc. And so I take those pieces and I bleach them. I harvest them out of the pods, each one of those pods, and then I bleach them. And then I will dye them with natural dyes and put them back into work. You'll see those often in the things that I do. I've taken the little discs. I've used some of those little plastic discs as well. But I have another artist friend, Stacy Hortner, who actually we get challenge each other, and I gave her some of those to challenge. You can see some of her work online, but it's really fun how we do that. So then after we do the house Tyvek, there's yet one more really heavy duty grade of Tyvek. And if we could go to Barkley, there's one that I call In a Barkley Manner. It's on up further. There it is. And this actually uses an old raincoat. And it gives the look of bark. I mean, I can't get over what it would give to me, in terms of its texture. And again, I'm often looking for the texture for different pieces. The Keurig coffee filters are there, the little tufts that are just kind of there. Bring your cursor down just a little bit, Claudia. There's where the Tyvek is. Go to your right, please, about halfway. Now go straight up. Those are Keurig coffee filters right there. So, and it's got dryer lint in it, which is another thing I use a lot. I was doing my laundry and I was like, God, this is so beautiful. There's got to be something I can do with this. It now has become a staple in a lot of the work that I do. So it's a lot of fun. So anyway, we have a lot of fun with that. So that's the raincoat Tyvek. There's one more grade, and this is, remember in the beginning, I mentioned that there is a real rare exception. I see Sarah Eberly is in on the thing with this. Sarah will chuckle if you go to the pictures that I showed you, Claudia. The finest grade of Tyvek that you will ever receive comes on the inside of a baby diaper. And this is the inside of a brand new, clean, from Sarah, she can be the witness, baby diaper that I had. This is just one of those moments of experimentation that I had done, but I love the look of it. It is just, there are these funny little pellets that are on the inside that I have to figure out how to deal with this, which is why this is never finalized as a piece yet. Those little pellets come out and drop all over the place. And as soon as you think you got them all done, they're not done. But isn't that just, I love this patina. It excites me to see it and how it absorbed the dye, how it worked, with things. I just, like I said, the heat, the dye, everything that I used to erode that. So anyway, that's that. So, but it is clean. Sarah, nod your head to tell everybody no, so they know it is clean. It was brand new. One of the other things that's a real big surprise that I use in my work are shout color catchers. If you, in your laundry, you may, they make these things that are shout. I don't know who that manufacturer is now that I want to pull it out of there. But you put it in with your laundry and it absorbs the color and pulls it away from other fabrics. Now, I had done quilting prior to working in art at all. And I learned to work with batiks. and batiks bleed all over everything. So you need to do this ahead of time. Well, now all my quilter friends, as they do their work with them, they now all send me their shout color catchers. Because if we could go back to the website for just a moment, I'd like to show you a piece that's called Sunset Dreams, right down there. This piece actually, in its background, is where the color catchers are cobbled together. It was a commissioned piece. And actually go on down to one of the details there, to the one on the left, you can see it pretty well, where you can see the color catchers are behind this, the stitching. The front, again, the thread work is framed between those two pieces of museum glass, and they are casting and allowing the colors from the back to come through. And so the yellow streak, by the way, is it's a silk scarf. I had done some dyeing classes, natural dye classes at the pier, just simply as a way to reach out to the public. And I had this leftover scarf, and it was just perfect for the streak of color that I wanted in the middle of this piece. The owners were absolutely thrilled with it, and they didn't expect it. This particular lady was a quilter and had given me the color catchers, and they were just blown away when they realized that what I had done with what they had sent me. So now they are a steady supplier. This is a good way to make that happen. So anyway, Claudia, let's see if we can, let me move the notes that I shared with you so we're both on the same page. Gravy Scots. Grab those just a second. Okay. I really, that kind of causes me to move a little bit into the next phase of my own development as an artist. And I really wanted to add dimension to what I was doing. So if Claudia, if you could go to encaustic, and then after the encaustic, go to the piece known as encaustic, the last one on the right. So I wanted to add dimension to what I was doing. When I was at school, I didn't get to play with wax at all, but this one young man in one of my classes did this most fascinating piece where water was coming out of a pipe. And I asked him how he did that. And he said, oh, with wax, it's wax. Okay, all right. So I thought I wanted to be able to do this, and as I was thinking about how I could push my art to the next level, I thought that's what I'm going to do. So I got a book, and little did I know how poor those pictures were in that book. I really didn't know. You see, I wanted to bring the dimension to my work. For example, in this piece, the gray that you see, that's my thread. That is thread made into, these little shapes that actually protrude from the wax. Above that is sawdust and my famous Keurig coffee filters. Down below that are these curly cues. Just as a tiny aside, Pat and I make all of the shipping crates, wooden shipping crates where we ship the artwork in. And one day the pieces just wouldn't fit together quite right. And so he was taking a plane to it, a hand plane to it, and they got these gorgeous curls. And I said, oh my God, gotta have those. So I started painting those and putting them into the work. The kind of waffly looking material, I had a Pottery Barn lamp I bought, and gee, that was real textural. I liked it. Just beyond that are Keurig coffee filters that are worked into the wax. All of this to show that, again, I protruded it out because that's what I thought you were supposed to do. And that's what, it looked to me like it was happening in the book. And that, remember, this young man had made this water. So clearly this must be the way it's supposed to be. But I decided a couple of years later that I would go up to R&F Encaustics in New York because they had a class that they were teaching on encaustics. And I thought, you know what, I finally should really learn this the right way. So I went to take the class, and it was really quite a fun thing because when I got up there, they realized they were teaching people how to do it three-dimensionally instead of the way it's supposed to be done two-dimensionally. And they were using my work as part of their example. And it was just crazy because I was up there trying to learn the right way and they were trying to figure out what I had done. So it was kind of a mutual fun course that we'd done together. It was fabulous. So anyway, this piece was an early piece. It took Best in Show in Tubac, Arizona. And so I get to give a plug for yay me. The next one over, I'll always try and use different things. The next one is Burnout in this series that I'd like to talk about. What you're seeing is a close-up detailed picture right there. That's an avocado shell and charcoal. I figured out how to be able to preserve the avocado shells, the little brown curlicues right there in the front. That's actually a lychee nut shell that I went ahead and used that as well, those little curlicues. The green is the thread that will always be. And this, when I work in encaustic, I have to tell you a little story again. You have to realize that I didn't do this all of my life. I always thought I couldn't be. Sewing to me and working with thread is so natural, so intuitive. I've been doing this since, I mean, my mother tells the story how I was sewing when I was 2. And I envision it must be some big quilting hoop, but she would talk about how when she was sewing, I would just sit there next to her and I would be sewing on the floor. By the time I was 4, when she would leave the area, I would jump up in her seat and start sewing on her sewing machine. Knowing what a hard-headed little person I was right from birth, she basically said, you know, she felt like she needed to teach me so I didn't run her machine because there was no stopping me. And so she taught me to sew then. And so sewing to me is very intuitive. But Mrs. Connor had explained to me that I couldn't do art. So when I put on my smock and I start working in wax and I move those colors around and I shape and I bring those pieces together, I feel like I'm an artist. Ironically, I don't quite feel the same way when I'm working with just the thread. Crazy, I know, but all they say artists are nuts, and I'm just proving it for you. If we could just go down, but my point is when I go into this work, I started learning to hide things, learning to send extra messages, and really feeling great. This piece, by the way, is titled Burnout because it's a tribute to the people in California. I have a brother that lives in LA. For several years in a row, there were horrific fires that caused them to lose everything. And not my brother, but people in California. So this is a tribute to those people that went through that burnout. The scorched earth, all the colorations and things are to remind you of scorched earth and how that is. But the secret is that they do have a guardian angel and tomorrow will come. The green little thread pieces are for that suggestion of that newness and that renewal that happens. But about where Claudia's cursor is, there's the hidden angel that's in the piece. You don't see her right away. The buyers of that, they didn't see it right away. She came back to me and said, I know there's a secret here. You told me I've got to figure it out. When I pointed it out to her, she and her husband have had great times. Apparently it took about 7 months for him to find it. But
so it took me a while to find it. You were describing exactly where it was. And I said, oh, there she is.
Exactly. So it's just a simple little way that it was just hidden in the strokes of the wax and working with it. And it was kind of
purposeful, Carla, or was that like a happy accident?
No, it was purposeful trying to do it. Like I said, I'm feeling like an artist.
Yeah.
And going like, well, I can do this. So the last encaustic piece that I would show you today has its own other story. This is this piece I completed while I was at the pier. It was actually a commissioned piece. And the commission was, they gave me the coloration. They had seen some of my other encaustic work and they wanted, and other work, and they wanted it to have a very natural feel. It was to be in 5 panels. Those 5 panels had to work together as one cohesive piece, or any 2 tangential pieces, 2 or 3 tangential pieces had to be able to work together. And any piece had to be able to work alone as an individual abstract piece of art. I'm proud I believe that I created just that in this particular work. It originally was, meant to be spring thaw. Um, we have all of these thaws that happen in the late winter. We start to have that snow melt. I know it's going to melt for you guys soon, but the snow melt comes, and it comes rushing down, bringing with it all that slime and all that sort of thing. But as I did it, and this piece is 10 foot wide when all 5 pieces are put together, and 3 foot tall. It spans away from the work. By the way, I've never have learned how to embed properly, but the bringing the work at 7.5 inches at its thickest point. This particular piece, the thread is the water. You can see that pretty closely. But the rocks are all done out of different types of packing foam. Some of it, my daughter had, those meals that get delivered and you make them and cook them at your house. She had those kinds of things. I had some foam. I had all sorts of different types of things. And I, again, just experimenting what will do what for me, and then figuring out how to use it. Also, as Claudia and I were talking the other day, I have this newfound affinity because I know now how to preserve those avocado shells. Avocado shells are like in that center panel up at the upper right-hand corner up there. The brown pieces are carpeting that I have just layered and layered and layered and layered with wax to make those pieces. So as I was doing this, the joke became, I have to have rocks in my head to do this. And so it stuck. And so that is this particular piece. Thank you, COVID. It failed. And so now it'll be going on its way to Art Expo New York in November of this year. And if it doesn't sell there, it'll go to Art Basel in Miami in December, because I'll be in both of those shows later this year. But those are each of the panels. There you can get, there's moss, the moss on the rocks. Those are actually thread. I couldn't get away without my Keurig coffee filters. They're up in the upper center part up there, creating the texture in the green slime. So that's just really kind of how that piece goes. So the waffling is the other kind of stuff. It's really fun. I'll tell you one tiny little backstory from that. It took me a while to track down who that kind of waffle packaging came from. And you remember I fell in love with it in the brown state from Pottery Barn. And so how did I get it? And so I finally found the company. I called them up and I said to the guy, "Can I have your scraps?" I said, "It's important. I got to have your trash. I really don't want anything new." So he sent me both new and trash. And so I was getting, boxes of that packing off their floor, scraps from their floor. And they love this piece. I may try and sell it to them. We'll see what happens. Anyway, let's see. We got to that. I'll give you one quick interim on what I've done during the course of COVID. It really kind of changed my world a lot, as Claudia mentioned from the outset. And so we could go maybe pop over to the blog, the section there. As I mentioned earlier, I was a quilter before I ever went to UArts. And when my husband died, I saved his shirts. And I asked my children at the time if they would like for me to make quilts for them out of his shirts. And they were, "Oh yeah, Mom, we would love it." But I didn't do it right away. And then, and I feel myself kind of choking up a little bit. Forgive me for that. After about 4 years after he had died, I said, "Okay, guys, some time has passed. Do you still want me to do this?" And my wordsmith son said, "I can't think of anything more precious in life than a quilt made of my father's shirts by my mother's hand." And that kind of did me in. I had to then follow through, but it took COVID and quarantine to bring me to that moment in time when I would do that. So these are the 3 quilts that were made out of my husband's shirts this last year. Each one has favorite shirts that the kids enjoyed. And there's a big joke about my son being Amish. He's living down in Texas. But we have a joke about that. My husband was a ham radio operator, and around the outside, not one of them has noticed it yet. I can't wait until one of them does. But he and I, it's a long story I won't bore you with, but it was always glad you got to see me. Even on his tombstone at Arlington, it reads, glad you got to see me. And so in Morse code, I took shirt pieces and did glad you got to see me around it. And when I did the binding. So it's going to be fun to see which one of them sees it first. And this is the label that was made for one, of course, with each one's own name. So anyway, let's see. That was the long overdue. Claudia, let's pop from that piece to what I'm really doing now, because now I can go back to work doing what I love to do. Last year, I visited, I went to Chandler, Arizona with some of my quilting friends. I had been out there for a show in the Phoenix area. And so I went on to do this with my friends. This that you see right here is a slice of a dead fish hook cactus. If you look at those tines on the edge, you'll see those hooks that they are deadly. I'm here to tell you, they hurt. But this thing just captured my imagination to the point I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I shipped it home. And now I am doing a modified piece that will go into the show, that they're doing a show. I hope I get this right. It's Atelier. I don't know where it is. That it's coming up. Sarah, I have to tell you.
Atelier.
Atelier, yeah. I was going to ask you, Sarah, what I feel like I've been pronouncing it wrong for like a month now.
Well, they're doing a thing on the artist past and present from Cherry Street Pier. And so that's my piece. This is a center section of it. That's dryer lint again. I love how I can achieve different textures and colors. One thing I failed to mention, sometimes people, when they would come into the studio at the pier, we would talk about, what I was doing and how I would do it and how it started. They got to see it from the beginning to the end. But I would ask them, well, how many colors do you see in that piece? And they might say 3. And then I would turn to my huge thread walls that I had at the pier, and I would show them how if they saw 3, I could guarantee there was at least 10. And then I could show them. And literally, there's probably about 20 colors that are filling in this space that you're seeing right now. And the lint then gets worked in with it. So it doesn't go anywhere. It stays all together. And it's pretty cool. So I wanted that texture in that space. If you could push to the next one. The next slide.
That's all I got. I thought that it was just, that was the last one. Is there more?
There should be 2 more, maybe not.
I will find them in my email. Hold on one second. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. There's 2 more. Along about that same time, I actually, I mentioned my brother in LA, and I went out to visit my brother out there. And they had a horrible windstorm that night, and it knocked out a lot of, like all kinds of stuff. Where we go, there we go. Now go. There we
Sorry
go.
about that.
Yeah, it knocked out all sorts of branches and leaves and this sort of things. And this that you see here is a palm frond. It's the base that wraps around before the trees or before the branches actually open up, or the leaves, or whatever you call them. I should learn this better. I wanted to take those, I preserve them. One of the ways you can preserve natural materials so that they stay forever is to soak and work glycerin into them. So it not only made it more supple so I can work with it, but it's now has preserved it forever. And so this glycerin is on that palm frond root or bark, and I'm mocking up the shredding of that part of that. That's what you're seeing here. And the last picture will give you an idea. It's like 6 foot at its completion, but there you can get a sense of how that all is working together. all those little tines and things that you see will actually, they'll be suspended, they'll be pushed up, they'll have dimension on their own, and once again get framed between the museum glass. For the purposes of this exhibit, the concept will be to leave a piece of it on the left to be not finished, as people would have seen it at the pier, and as different phases in the pier, as people would see pieces completed, till finally on the far right would be the completed piece that people, it's just to talk about, this is the morphos that we experienced when we were at the pier. So when I was working there at the pier. So that's the current piece that I'm working on. It's a piece that's sitting here on my table right now. And that's what it's going to be. I think we pretty much, did we hit it all? Did I get it all? I think
you did. And now I'd like to hear a little bit more about your move and how that's been inspiring you, and what your future plans are in Oriental.
I got to tell you, this is Philadelphia was an adopted home for me. I was originally from Houston, Texas. And because of my husband's career in the military and my work with Merrill, we literally lived all over the world. And so Philadelphia, for me to adopt it as a home was a big deal when I went back to school and I remade me, and I never saw myself ever leaving. But I was living in Old City. And after I left the pier, I went to another section of town, and it became very violent. And it became, I really couldn't deal with it well anymore. It was affecting my health as well as everything else. And so finally, after a lot of resistance, Pat had been trying to say to me, we got to go, we got to get out of here. And I finally said, agreed. So we knew we wanted to be on water. We knew we wanted to be a part of a community that embraced the arts. We started in New Hampshire, working our way down the coast. And again, I won't bore you with all of it, but at one point, finally, I said to Pat, Pat is my partner now, but Pat, I told him, I said, look, Ed and I actually found a little community. He found it, and we put a bid unsuccessfully on a house in a little town in North Carolina. It's called Oriental. It's the sweetest little fishing village you've ever seen in your life. It is wonderful. And I said, look, humor me, please. Let's just go take a look. And I need to know whether or not this little town is what I remember. And if it is known as the sailing capital of North Carolina. Pat loves to sail. I said, if it's the same thing, you're going to love it. So he took 5 days of vacation. We got down here, and in less than 5 hours, we began negotiations on the house I now live in. He fell in love with it as well. This little community has 962 residents now that are here, and it has 3,200 boats. So it really, truly has more boats than people. It has one of the most active arts communities you can ever imagine. When we would go to a restaurant or to a store or whatever, we would say to the clerks or the waitress or the other people that were around, we're thinking about moving to your fair town. Why would we do that? And consistently, the answer would come back, usually always the water was the first, because the water here is gorgeous. I can actually show you some pictures later. But the water is wonderful. It's on the Intercoastal Waterway. If you find the map of Cape Hatteras, come down the North Carolina coast and you see Cape Hatteras, come back across to the Intercoastal Waterway and you will see Oriental. And so they would tell us that first. The second thing they said was everybody's from somewhere else. So there's no old guard to get in your way. Everybody's going to welcome new people. But the third thing, them not knowing what I did for a living, said, and if you like the arts, oh my, have you seen our gallery? Which is phenomenal. It rivals anything I've ever seen in Philadelphia. It's fabulous. And we have the Old Porch Music Festival every year. That's a big two-day music festival. They have open mic night at the Silos every Wednesday. We'll be out there tonight. We have, the old theater that puts on plays and brings in talent that's of amazing caliber. So it really captured our hearts. So I knew when we came here, I wanted to do something additive, but I'll never forget my days in Philadelphia. So I'm transporting a little bit of Philadelphia here. I actually am in final negotiations for a lease to do a Cherry Street Pier, Sarah. I am making a space for artists to work where the people can come in and they can visit with the artist, they can watch the artists that work, they can buy from the artist right there. All of the same basic concept that we had at the pier, that sort of mantra will be the part here. I did a piece for our thing called towndoc.net. And it's called A Place for Artists to Work, if anybody wants to look that up. And it's our online newspaper, if you will. But towndoc.net put this thing out, on this story out on me. I did a little taping for them. And in less than 24 hours, I had 6 artists that were ready to go into this. It's pretty phenomenal. This is a very supportive and interested community. There is an educational component to it, which is a lot like Portside. We want to be able to educate the public. So there will be a teaching element that's involved there. So people can come take classes, there'll be some for the younger people, but older adults. They ask me, by the way, I'm already on the Arts Council here, but they asked me if I would teach, if there was anything I could teach. And I said, well, I could do natural dye because they had some grant money that needed to be spent within 2 weeks. So I said, I could do that. So they throw it up on Town Doc that this natural dye class is going to be taught. And 4 classes later, I told them I had to stop. I had to make some time for myself. There's an appetite for people to learn here. That's just evidence of it. The final phase, again, bringing a piece of Philadelphia with me for those that are familiar with Next Fab. The final phase of Third Fab is to put together Next Fab, where we could have wood shops, a metal shop, perhaps even a kiln for pottery or glass blowing. There are 3 pottery artists here. I mean, it's amazing, the talent that's here and the interest that's here. So I have had incredible, unbelievable support from people in the short period that I've been pulling this together. And it's almost going to be there, I'm sure, by April 1st, and we might be by March 15th up and running with the first phase. So that's my deal. I'm pretty excited. So Philadelphia came with me.
That is very exciting. Yeah, I can't wait to hear how that goes.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'll be tapping a few of you guys as we look for guest artists to come down.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll return the favor for you doing this for us, this great artist talk. And just so everyone knows, I put the Town Doc website in the chat if you want to check it out and see more of what Carla's talking about. Does anyone have any questions for Carla?
I just want to say, I think your art is amazing, Carla. And we always, Sarah had an immediate kinship with you when she met you, and she was like, oh, let's save this for Carla. Let's save this for Carla. And she got all different types of shipping materials and all. And so that's really cool. And I think it's really cool how your art also has a story behind it. As we know, being artists, you put something up there and, without a title or without a story, it's okay, but it's better to have a story behind, because that's when people go and admire it in their location and say, oh, well, let me tell you the story behind this art. And it makes it so much more like personal, and also it feels more valuable because it's not just like something put together. It means something, to you. And I think that's amazing. I love to hear that. And I love to hear when my teachers have stories behind their art, and the children too. The children, forget about it. They have, amazing stories behind just like a couple slobs of paint and a little house over here. And they just tell us a 15-minute story about that art that they did, who lives in the house, how they get there, their car broke down, their mom hurt their foot, she jumped the fence, and they just go, and with the story behind it, it makes it like just more fun, I guess it is a good word to say. And you really are able to capture that, and with a lot of emotion too, which and that's how artists are. They don't only make art, but they feel art. And you are a perfect example of that type of artist, which is, a true artist, in my opinion, that doesn't just put stuff onto a canvas to make a couple bucks, but actually feels and is one with the art. I always say about the Portside, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. And I think that's the same way with a lot of artists that really are able to not be a starving artist. And you've passed that threshold, Carla. So as an artist. I'm very proud of you, and I would love you to share, more stuff with us to help us help our artists to get to that point where you are, and at a comfortable stage that they can quit 3 of their jobs and become an artist. Because our artists, they just work so hard. All my teachers have second jobs and do art on the side. And it's a constant struggle for something that is so beautiful and a universal language like music and art. I mean, it just like it doesn't matter what language you talk or what part of the country you come from. It's just art is amazing, and you've really captured that. And I thank you so much for being our artist at lunch today. And you're awesome.
Oh, well, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for those kind words.
Yeah.
I really do believe that we have, you're right, as artists, we share our souls. We have to share our souls, and that, and to me, that's where I am in my life, that, if I can push that forward. I would make one comment that you're talking about, and I think another big advantage that I have over other artists that might be working right now and earlier in their career, that business background served me well. And, being able to understand that art is really a business at its core. We don't want to admit that, but it really is a business at its core. And if we learn that tenet, and then we create within that tenet, it really is explosive. And that's my feeling.
That's so true, because we can make art all day long. The hardest thing is selling it. I mean, I would love that profession, just like go in my studio and just make art all day long and just give it to somebody else and say, sell it.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, and we have to develop game plans. Part of, okay, I'm selfish and I'm going to let another little piece of this out in this group that I'm trying to do down here. My contribution, I hope, will be helping artists understand how to make that business plan and how to enact that business plan, to understand, what it costs them to make that art and how to get it out there. That's what I hope to do.
If you have a PowerPoint or anything like that, once you develop it, Carla, if you could pass it on to us, I would love to share it with my teachers and our community artists.
I would love it. I mean, I see myself doing a lot of things with Philadelphia still. I mean, again, it's an adopted home, and sharing with people that shared with me is important to me.
Yeah. Also, I would love to get our teachers and friends, like we do stuff together where the Portside is such a really cool family and very unique. But I would love to get the teachers together and come make a visit to you as a little,
I love it. I love it.
We're headed to Vermont soon in the spring to see one of our teachers who has bought some land in Vermont, and she's harvesting medicinal mushrooms for Alzheimer's and different stuff, and also some hemp that for CBD. And so we're going to make our first retreat. It's going to be up to see Miss Jessa Minnick, and then we would love plan our second retreat to go see you. That would
down
be
here.
awesome.
Down here. I will show you a great time. I will show you amazing art community. I mean, it's fabulous here.
And we're
I was telling Carla the other day that we'll have to have a second Portside location down there.
A third.
All about it.
A third? Second.
Oh, yeah, it's true.
Yep,
yeah. Yep. A little satellite place.
Oh, yeah. That'd be awesome.
I have a question.
Sure.
I think I typed it on the screen. My name is Barbara.
Hi, Barbara.
And I don't know how I came across this. I just would say it was a God thing, divine intervention that I came across this. I'm a quilter also. Oh. And the fact that you share that you have a background in quilting kind of led me to say, okay, yeah, I totally get now why I was supposed to be here. But the thing you also mentioned about how we don't art as a business, quilters have a hard time realizing that their work and effort is worth a lot in the big scheme of art. Yep. I had not noticed and really understood that until I recently, last year, put out a big, bold prayer and said, hey, God, I love this working with my hands. I love fabric. I love quilting. I'm a retired nurse. And I said, I would love it if I could have someone ask me to do a piece of art and be willing to pay what it's worth. Because all of my stuff has really been, whether it's to family, whether it's to fundraisers, but within 12 hours, I had an email from that prayer, someone asking me to do a piece. And that piece ended up being, I did things in that piece I'd never done before.
Yay!
I drew a 3-foot elephant, which I had never obviously done before, but it was way outside of my comfort zone. But as I did that piece, oh my gosh, I just fell in love with where it took me. And so now I feel like I'm moving way beyond just your regular piecing quilt.
Good for you.
But when it came time to, well, how am I going to get it there? Because I live in Arizona. The piece was going to Alaska. And through some of my groups on Facebook, quilting groups, they talked about, yeah, well, the post office really won't give you what the value when you insure it. And so I thought,
Right.
okay, I need to go with maybe FedEx. And then I also need to actually maybe, my brain said, you need to get it appraised. Well, I had no idea that they actually appraised quilts. And there are certified people out there that do that. Well, by the time that I had that done, she appraised my piece at $24.50. And I was speechless, which has never happened to me ever.
Wow.
But as I say that, that whole experience led me down a path of realizing that the value of our art as quilt makers really does go beyond just the blanket on the bed. I mean, this piece that I did, boy, when I looked at it, I was kind of like sad I was giving it away, that I was selling it, because it was really, for me, spectacular. And I say that humbly because it really wasn't just me making that quilt. But there's so much that you can do in it. And could I just turn my camera? I'll turn my camera on, and I want to show you a piece that came out of that, a request that came out of that. So I'm sorry, I was kind of in my laid back clothes, so I did not come on, but
Don't worry about it.
I just want to show you. And my art room here is pretty crappy, but do you see this?
Well, it looks like mine. Look at that.
That is a portrait piece that came out of that. And so I've done a whole bunch of stuff in that, multimedia for sure.
Wow.
And I just think that quilting is no longer just quilting. You know, that I used actual watercolor and makeup, and the hair is a mash mix of all kinds of fabric that they're now calling a mosaic quilting. And so when you get to that point, you know, you mentioned that you did a post-baccalaureate program that's no longer out there. And one of my questions I put to you is, do you know of other programs similar that might still be available?
Only one that I heard of when I was doing, I literally stumbled across the one at UArts, and the other one that I heard of was in a place in California that I don't remember now. I think it's a sin that we don't have that, because there are people such as yourself, as I put myself in that same category, where there's something inside us that we have something to offer. And when we figure out how to take that from here and put it out there, then it is magical for both parties, for those that see it and receive it. I mean, the reaction that I have to people looking at my work, I'm sure it's just like you know, that you're humbled by it. You're going, my God, people really like what I did, you know, and we didn't spend our lives this way. So we're still not sure that, gee, could I ever even do it again? And, you know, it just takes, I think we need that affirmation, sadly, but we need that affirmation for ourselves, not for the rest of the world, but for ourselves, that says, I can do this. And that programs like that post-baccalaureate, I think that was magical to me. It changed my life. Had that not been there, you know, I mean, I'm not sure exactly where I would be. I know I wouldn't have been in Philadelphia. I know I wouldn't have met the people that I met. I know I wouldn't have had the experiences that I had. And I would encourage you to, if there's any kind of a community college or anything like that that you can do, or any way that you feel that could give you that personal affirmation, do it. Do it. That's pretty impressive work that you're doing there. That's pretty
Thank you.
stinking impressive. I think everybody
appreciate it.
that
Thank
is
you.
here would agree. Yeah.
Well, I will look. I'm in Arizona,
Awesome.
so I'm sure
Also-
that we might have something.
Quilting is really cool. I go to the Poconos a lot, and up in Lancaster they do that a lot, and they actually tell like whole stories with the quilting, which is really cool. You could actually, like, if you were to do that with a painting, you would have to do like all these different scenes and stuff in a painting, but with the quilt you could actually see how it flowed, just like a storybook, which is really cool. You have
Exactly.
an advantage with that quilting that you're doing. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, very
For
cool.
sure. For sure.
Well, I will look for someplace here.
Well, follow us. Perhaps we can help you out.
I will.
Listen,
I
I'm
will.
going to give a plug to them. It's probably seems shameless at this moment, but I would give you, I had the opportunity. I didn't know really who they were. They found me the first time and said, gee, would you mind come doing this little thing with kids? Well, I'm a sucker. Of course, and so I did. I went. I enjoyed those kids and their interaction, how their little brains work, and that sort of thing. But the more, what I really learned, and I ladies, you may want to correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm going to tell you is the story when I told a colleague that I was going to be doing that first little artist talk with the kids at Portside. They credited Portside as being the catalyst of change for your entire neighborhood.
Wow.
The neighborhood was apparently going downhill in Philadelphia pretty rapidly. Portside came in and it gave definition, it gave purpose, it gave focus, it gave reason. And others around followed suit. And when I heard that, I knew whatever your mission was, I was behind it, because you're making a difference, one little child at a time, but you're making a difference.
We are so grateful for our children. And when we opened up here 14 years ago, our community we had 8-week classes. Our community couldn't afford more than 3 weeks at a time. And we had our summer camp and people actually paid by the day. So our bookkeeping was a nightmare. Now our people pay, the automatic withdrawal. Our area has gentrified, but we still have a lot of our old citizens here, which is a nice mix. But yeah, we're very grateful. Our community supports us wholeheartedly, and they always
love you. Not just support, they
love
truly
them
love you.
too. Somehow we find all the diamonds and they come our way. And our children, we have a teacher here right now. She just left and she's been with us since 5th grade. She attended our after school programs, our summer camp. Then she became a junior counselor. Then she became an assistant. Then she became a co-teacher, and now she's teaching.
How cool is that?
That's awesome.
Going to school for, arts administration and teaching. And it's so cool. So we're very homegrown. And it's really, it's a blessing. The Portside has been to me, as it's made me a much better person. We had to have some incidents here once in a while, and I say, wow, I've really matured. Like maybe 10 years ago, may have been like, why'd you do that? Why? Now it's like, well, why do you think you did that? So it's a lot of, the kids we just cherish them. And thank you so much, Carla. And thank you to Barbara and Claire and Chris. Thank you. And Jody. Jody is one of our old teachers. Hi, Jody. I see your name over there.
Hi.
How are you? It's been a while. Last I saw you
I'm
a little baby.
Oh yeah, those are my nephews.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we had.
Where's the boat? Yeah. Where's the beach, Jody? Where are you at? Where's the beach? You're showing the picture.
The picture is from Cape May. That's where I went on my birthday.
Cool. We looked there. Couldn't afford there. Starving artists can't afford there.
I'm not staying there, but I just was there for a weekend, and I took a picture.
Yeah, Cape May.
Beautiful.
I did notice that a couple of you joined us a little late. We started at noon, but not to worry. This is being recorded and it's going to, it's live on YouTube right now. And then we're going to post it on our website, hopefully as soon as we can, maybe tomorrow. So if you want to check back to see the full talk.
Awesome.
And does anyone else have any more questions for Carla before we go?
The
Thank
best.
you all for letting me be a part. I
Yes,
really
Carla,
appreciate it.
thank you so much. I know
Thank
how
you,
busy
Carla.
you are. You've got a whole bunch of commissions and
Yeah, I
your
got a
own-
couple of those to do too.
yeah. So
God bless you.
you're
Feast
very
and
busy, but
famine.
thank you so much for carving out some time to talk to us and to inspire us. You have such a great story. And you know, you were saying you were late to the game with being an artist, but that's the beautiful thing about being an artist is there's you can never like start too late. You know what I mean? And in fact, I think that the older you get, the more interesting your art is because you have your life to like work from. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think
And,
you have a lot more, your wells are deeper.
yes, exactly. Exactly. And like you were saying, you have that business background. So you've made it work and you're such an incredible, inspiring artist. And I'm really proud of everything that you're doing.
Yeah, that was great advice, Carla. That's really, really good advice. When I started the art center, I kind of like started it and then looked for funding.
Yeah, well, that's a little bit.
I know. I was like, oh, I was finding like drug bags on the street and different things. I'm like, man, these there's nothing to do here. There's no movie theaters, no roller skating rinks, no arcades, nothing. So what are the kids going to do? Like, you know, what do they say? Idle hands or the devil's workshop. So this really came in a really good time, and it's survived as a primarily, you know, all female run business. We've recently let some men into the picture.
Oh, well.
They're okay.
Yeah, they're doing a great job. I'm pleasantly surprised, to tell you the truth. So thank you so much, Carla, and thank you, Barbara, for joining us, and Jody, and thank you for being a wonderful host, Miss Claudia.
Yes, ma'am.
Great weekend. Everybody enjoy the snow.
Well, I'll just
Maybe not
enjoy
you,
that.
Barbara, in Arizona.
No snow here.
Thank you.
Exactly. Well, again, thank you all. I hope you have a wonderful creative day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you so
too.
much.
All right. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.